So a fresh new week has arrived, and here on this channel, that means one thing and one thing only. Every weekend, I post an episode of this series we do called Your Take Not Mine, where I turn to you, the viewers, to give me your hottest NBA takes of the week, based on what's going on at the time, and I then choose my favorite submissions and discuss them in a video. This week, there has been a ton of things unfolding in a pretty surprising way, both good and bad, so we definitely have plenty to discuss. In order to submit your takes, I make a community post on either the day of or the day before the video, similar to the one that you will see right here. So if you want a chance to be featured in a future episode, be sure to stay on the lookout for that. Before we start though, it turns out a good amount of you watching right now aren't even subscribed to the channel, so if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, as not only does it help out a ton, but I'd also very much appreciate it. Now with that being said, let's begin. The first take we'll be discussing today comes to us from Samuel, and he says that either Giannis Antetokounmpo or Damian Lillard, or possibly both, will be traded by the trade deadline this year if the Bucks continue to not meet expectations. Well, look what we have here. A little over a week ago, I published a video where I gave my bold predictions for the upcoming season, and one of them was that the Milwaukee Bucks were going to drop off a bit and end up possibly in the play-in tournament. The comment section of that video tore me apart, calling me a Bucks hater, telling me I had no clue what I was talking about, and more along those lines. Yet here we are barely over a week into the season, and takes like this are now becoming the norm, to the point where Giannis himself even discussed the possibility of a trade. It is still way too early in the year for me to bust out an I told you so, but I kind of told you so. Last season, there was very little to be inspired about with the Bucks after they fired head coach Adrian Griffin and brought in Doc Rivers to replace him, and due to the fact that I am very familiar with Doc Rivers' track record over the last decade, I had zero faith in things getting that much better, if at all. Now the Bucks have lost 5 of their first 6 games of the season, with their only win coming on opening night against a 76ers squad that didn't even have Joel Embiid or Paul George playing, and the Bucks are sitting at the very bottom of the standings. The team is ranked in the bottom third of the league defensively and in the bottom 5 of the league offensively, which is even more disastrous considering they made the trade for Damian Lillard specifically to try to improve their overall offensive output. The issue with that though is now Lillard looks like a shell of his former self, shooting the ball pretty inefficiently, and his struggles on the defensive end become more and more glaring by the game. Giannis is still an MVP caliber player, but the roster around him is aging and flawed, and while I definitely don't expect the Bucks to be at the bottom of the standings forever, I am definitely sticking to my original prediction of them realistically only being a play-in team. If, however, they can't even swing that, then the trade rumors will absolutely heat up around the deadline because Giannis himself will absolutely be pushing for it to happen. Giannis has flirted with the idea of being traded in the past and leaving, dating all the way back to the year before they won the NBA Finals, so it's not coming out of nowhere, and this time the avenues that the team has to plug the holes are a lot more minimal. The next take we'll be discussing today comes to us from Joey, and he says that the Pelicans should actually re-sign Brandon Ingram and trade away Zion Williamson to maximize their value. This one's interesting because for the greater part of the last year, the Pelicans have been moving in a way that indicates that they don't really see Ingram as part of their future plans as they continue to try to build a winner around Zion Williamson, who they drafted number 1 overall back in 2019. Ingram was involved in trade rumors pretty much all offseason, and after struggling down the stretch of last year, his value tanked to an all-time low, so no buyers ever presented themselves. But as is always the case, a new season means a fresh start to rewrite the narrative, and so far, things look a bit different for the Pelicans. The team is still missing DeJounte Murray, so they're not at full strength yet, and they've gone 3-3 to stay afloat, and it has actually been Brandon Ingram leading the way for them in scoring this year, not Zion Williamson. Ingram is scoring 23 points per game, shooting 48% from the field and 40% from 3, looking more like the former All-Star version of himself, while Zion looks a bit more sluggish than he ever has, scoring a career-low 21 points per game, making a career-low 44% of his shots. Zion is definitely trying to preserve his health now, more than ever after countless extended injury absences throughout his career, which is absolutely the right call, but if that's going to be the case, then we also have to admit that it severely limits his upside as a talent. When he was drafted, he was viewed as a potential superstar because of his otherworldly combination of strength and athleticism, but now that athleticism isn't on display nearly as much to preserve his feet and knees, so he's more limited offensively. It also doesn't help that his jumper hasn't really developed much since he's been drafted, so now Ingram does seem to be taking the reins again, except the problem is that Ingram is on the last year of his current contract, about to hit free agency next summer, while Zion is locked up on a max. I still believe they can work together, but the Pelicans need to realize that Zion may not be the number one option that they were hoping he could become at this point, and plan accordingly. And finally, the last take we'll be discussing today comes to us from Montrell, and he says that the Warriors are officially back and will finish as a top 3 team in the West this year. The Warriors have come out red hot this season, winning 5 of their first 6 games, and the craziest part is that Steph Curry hasn't even been the biggest reason why. He's only played in 3 of those first 6 games because he got injured, and in the games that he played in, he wasn't even performing anywhere near the level we're used to seeing him produce at, putting up about 18 points per game on pedestrian shooting splits. He's not even the team's leading scorer right now. Newcomer Buddy Hield is, who is putting up about 21 points per game, making a red-hot 50% of his threes on 10 attempts per game. Buddy Hield has been one of the league's premier sharpshooters for years now, but he's also known to have plenty of ups and downs. For example, when he first got traded to Indiana, he dropped 36 points in his 3rd game with the team, but by the time the Pacers traded him away, he was benched and put into a more minimal role. When he first got to the 76ers last season, the same thing happened where he dropped 20 or more points in the first 4 games he played with the team, yet by the end of the season, he was a liability on both ends of the floor and fell out of the rotation outside of one red-hot playoff game. The moral of the story here is that Buddy Hield is probably going to come back down to earth at some point, and his lack of effectiveness when his shot isn't falling at this unsustainable rate can be tough to overcome at times. The bright spot for Warriors fans regarding this, though, is that the return of Steph Curry can absolutely balance that out, and with Andrew Wiggins playing good basketball again after a pretty down year last year, along with Moses Moody breaking out as a 3-and-D wing, they've got the depth to compete with anybody. I still think I trust more than 3 teams in the West ahead of them in the long run though, but after missing the playoffs entirely last year, I can at least feel pretty confident in their odds to make it back to the big dance this season with this group. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you think about the takes discussed. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.